Yeah, so I think the online conference has been going really well. I didn't expect it to be so almost as good as the real thing. So for this session, we have a session about tools, software tools. So this will be an opportunity for us to talk about what it's like to be a software developer working for lexicography. And we're going to hear 4 presentations about 4 different tools that people have built for sort of assisting lexicographers and dictionary users at different points in the lexicographic process. So we have contributions from people talking about tools that come in at the beginning of the process when you're extracting data from a corpus, all the way to the end of the process where you're actually showing dictionary data to human users. So the way I would like to organize this session is to do it similarly to how Stolk organized his session earlier on today. So we will hear short introductions from the authors first, and everybody should take just a few minutes to introduce their contribution, their paper. So this would be like a reminder for people who have seen the pre-recorded presentations, and maybe a bit of a invitation for people who haven't seen it to look it up later and look at it. And then I'll try to start a discussion going just by asking the presenters a few questions that I have prepared myself, and we'll see where that takes us. Okay, so can I just ask the first presenter? I believe that's going to be Anna Daigneault.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're here, so I'll just stop sharing my screen, and if you want, you can share your screen and just introduce us to your paper.
Yes, hi, thanks for having me. I'm Anna Luisa Daigneault from Living Tongues Institute for Endangered Languages. So my topic here with Greg Anderson too. So we're going to give you a little background on living dictionaries. We pose the question in our paper, what if technology can disrupt language bias? With over 3,000 languages in danger of being lost before 2100, we know there's a need to act quickly. And there's a strong need to develop free tech tools that serve citizen linguists around the world. And so us at Living Tongues, we stand at the intersection of linguistics and activism, and we work at the grassroots level with communities. It's a moral imperative of the 21st century that we prioritize the decolonization and the democratization of linguistic resources. And so that's why we built the Living Dictionaries platform, which you can find at livingdictionaries.app. It's a mobile-friendly web platform where citizen linguists can build online dictionaries on any device for any language. They're multimedia tools. They serve language documentation and language revitalization and maintenance. We currently have over 200 threatened languages on the platform, and the interface itself is available in 9 dominant languages of the world so that more people can use it. And these are search-driven dictionaries with accompanying images and audio generated by the dictionary managers themselves who build the dictionaries, as well as some of our research teams around the world who build many of these dictionaries as well. And the intended audience for this is diverse, multilingual, and the people who use the living dictionaries are in the classroom or online communities of diaspora learners and many other people using it in their daily lives as a reference tool for exploring endangered languages. So that's a little introduction, and we welcome more questions at the end.
Yeah, okay, thanks very much. I'm sure people will have questions, but my brilliant idea was to have the short presentations first in one row and then questions after that. So let's stick with that. So can I just ask Sander Stolk to introduce us to his paper where he's talking about annotating published lexicographic data. So Sander, if you're there, can you maybe share your screen if you want to show slides?
Certainly. Let's see. Hopefully this displays in full screen, does it, Michal?
Yes. Yeah. I can see your slides.
Perfect. So I'm Sander Stolk from Leiden University. And my topic for today is scribbling in the digital margins. And I'm going to talk a bit about a way to annotate and extend published lexicographic works with shown or demonstrated in a certain tool called Evoke. I'll try to briefly summarize what it's about. The approach that I have been adopting in research for annotating, extending existing lexicographic resources makes use of something called personal digital copies. And these have a certain number of benefits for publishers as well as users, and the value of which has been demonstrated by showcasing that in a tool called Evoke, and using that in research and education, showing that it can be worthwhile. And I'll get to what a personal digital copy is in the next few slides. It's actually kind of inspired by, don't want to say medieval style, but it certainly dates back to early texts where scribes were able to annotate in the margins bits of relevant information to an existing text. Now, they weren't adjusting the main text, as it were, but only their personal copy, right? It didn't affect the original content, simply their own printed copy. So they made a unique copy, a personal copy, as it were. Now, one of the questions that has been leading up to my research is, can a digital version of this, can digital personal copies combine the best of both worlds, ink and internet, to basically not just offer the ability to expand and annotate, but also make sure that the original copy is not required to have a larger means to host, to have user accounts, or to require moderation, and without that original resource also having to show all these comments or annotations by default. So is there a way to make digital personal copies that are only available to the user themselves of a specific lexicographic resource? So this is something that we've explored and adopted in a tool called Evoke, and Evoke is a web application specifically for thesauri. And I will show some of that in work, how that works. So digital personal copies, the architecture behind that is as follows. As most online resources, lexical data, such as a thesaurus or a dictionary, is stored in an online repository, nothing new there. However, the new element here is that user content, here shown on the right with a tag, whether it's annotations or something else, is not automatically stored online as well in an online database, but stored in the user's internet browser in a storage mechanism called web storage, which is an HTML5 mechanism. So instead of it being publicly available, it is stored in the internet browser and retrieved at the same time as lexical data of original resources, and shown in unison on the user's screen. That means that users have full control over that data, and by implementing mechanisms that reference rather than replicate existing information, it kind of ensures that their own data remains their own data, and they don't download huge chunks of information from the original resource, for instance, which is very convenient for many licenses that are in place for these dictionaries and thesauri on the web. And this referencing mechanism is basically done through linguistic linked data, which is a paradigm that, or data format that identifies words and word senses through web addresses or IRIs. So it means that we can link data like we would link web pages. So we can reference instead of replicate information. And annotations are in this way made explicitly and linked up to the original data using standardized web mechanisms, in this case, web annotations, which is standard by W3C. There's a small, I think, it's going a bit quick. There's maybe an interesting visualization of this in the original paper, which I'll leave for another time. But this is the gist of it. So getting personal copies, digital personal copies in lexicographic resource on the web, where we don't replicate data, but reference it, and being able to share that for yourself and share it with others, without immediately making everything public or having the original publishers host all the material that has been entered. That concludes my presentation. I look forward to the discussion later.
Yeah, okay, thanks very much. And now we go to Geda Paulsen from Estonia, who is here to tell us about Estonian Ambiforms. So Geda, if you're here. Geda, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Maybe you're muted.
Sorry. Hello, I'm Geda Paulsen, and my colleagues are Ene Vainik, Ahti Lohk, and Tuulik. And our contribution presents a tool that assists the lexicographic editing process with an automated corpus-based application, the Distributional Index Calculator. And in this study, we will examine the impact of the pre-analysis of the distributional on the distributional index results. Now, firstly, what are the ambiforms? That is a term we use for the words or inflected terms corresponding to more than one word class interpretation. And here you can see one example in Estonian. We have a noun, süda, meaning heart, and in elative case, it means from the heart, but it's become also used in more abstract meaning, sincerely, and it has developed adverbial functions. And this reflects the dynamic processes in Estonian, where the case forms of nominals yield adverbs, adpositions, and adjectives. And it's a very common and ongoing process in Estonian. That means an ambiform is used in slightly different new functions, and its frequency also rises in respect to other case forms or in respect to the normal frequency of a case form. But something the lexicographers have to ask very frequently is how frequent is frequent enough? To answer to that question, we suppose that the distribution of case forms taken abstractly, that is number and case forms, is characterized by steady proportions, and that's how we get the distributive norms of a case form. And the distributional index for nominal forms then relates the concrete case form with its normative frequency. For the concrete formula, please check out our presentation video. And so we developed a distributional index calculator to assist the lexicographic decision-making process in these kinds of morphological decategorization cases I just talked about. Now here you can see two ambiforms as analyzed by the distributional index calculator. And the first one is the same form südamest we saw recently. And so it's a elative form, and the norm value of the elative is presented here. And as we can see, the distributional index label of the form südamest has moderate overrepresentation. The other ambiform is pilves, that is cloud, a known cloud in inassive case. And it can mean in a cloud or stoned. And then it can be interpreted as an adjective or adverb. As you can see in the analysis here, we have 3 different parts of speech interpretations. And the result normal, it's only the known form that receives the label, because these other interpretations are non-inflected, so they have no case forms interpreted here. Now, the question that rises is, what is the impact of the pre-analysis? And that's what we try to find out. And here you can see the circle of parts of speech tagging, case Estonian. And what we focused on here was some mismatches between the lexicographic database, the eLex morphological database, and the Vabamorph lexicon that is basis for morphological analyzer Estonian. And these lexicons do not always necessarily match in their parts of speech marking. In our data, we used as a basis our database over approximately 3,500 Ambi Forms, and approximately 1/3 of those are case form like nominal Ambi Forms. And we divided 4 different groups of Ambi Forms based on their lexicographic and technological status. That is, there are nouns that are tagged as case forms of nouns by the morphological analyzer. And there is a group of noun plus. Those are tagged as something else than nouns in addition to nouns by the morphological analyzer. And candidates that are not headwords in the combined dictionary of Estonian, at least yet. And then there are underspecified ambiforms that are headwords without parts of speech. And one of the results were that if the interpretations are split, the distributional index is normal or even below normal. There are, however, even in this group, some ambiforms with exceptionally high levels of distributional index. And these particular ambiforms are some exceptionally low frequency words or very high frequency words. So we can conclude that the most reliable distributional index results come from pure nouns without splitting the parts of speech interpretations into noun and something else. And ambiforms, we think, should be processed with their parts of speech readings reverted to the nouns in order to get a realistic result. You can also check out our distributional index calculator on this address, and we have presented a demo presentation too. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm sure there will be questions about this later. And now we go to Alberto Simões, who will introduce us to a dictionary writing system that he's been working on.
Okay, hello. So I will talk about LeXmart. That is a dictionary system we are working for 3 years. Some of you probably heard of it on the conference in 2019. So in this presentation that we'll try to convince you to watch if you didn't, we talk about 3 different lexicographic resources and how we are encoding them using the TLX 0 standard, and how we are simplifying the LexMart interface to allow a quick editing of this standard. So I will not go through these all steps. I'm just opening your curiosity. So in terms of story, LeXmart was developed as an open source platform, but targeted with a specific dictionary, the Dicionário da Língua Portuguesa Contemporânea, that was reverse engineered from PDF files. So we tried to keep the structure as intact as possible, and so we needed to do some adaptations to the TI Chapter 9 standard. So we did a custom tailored version of it. But as the dictionary is being edited and we are preparing an online version of this dictionary, we are simplifying the complex entries in order to comply with the TLX 0 standard. During this time, we noticed that LeXmart is stable enough to deal with this actual size dictionary. This has about 70,000 entries already, and it might be useful to use this software for other resources. So in this paper, we describe how we are adapting other resources like Dicionário Aberto and Vocabulário Ortográfico da Língua Portuguesa to be integrated into LeXmart. So why these are different than the original dictionary? Because Dicionário Aberto is a dictionary quite old, so from 1913, and it was transcribed by volunteers in the Project Gutenberg. So they didn't know anything about lexicography, so they just annotated italic and bold entries, and from there we inferred XML tail version of it. So its granularity of notation is quite larger than the original dictionary we were working with in LeXmart. Regarding the other resource, Evoke, it's not a dictionary by itself, it's a vocabulary, so it just includes words, their transcription, phonetic transcription, and usually a simple gloss. So it's not exactly a dictionary, and so they have a different structure from the original dictionary as well. So in the full paper, we describe in detail the structure of these three resources and how we are working with them to encode in LeXmart. So it's everything for now. I will not enter in details on the dictionaries and just use that for any questions that might arise. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. So let's return to the beginning and dig a little deeper into some of these, some of the tools that we've seen. Of course, everybody can ask questions in the chat window, or you can raise your virtual hand if you prefer to actually say the question. I myself, I would have a bunch of questions for the Living Dictionaries project. I mean, there's a couple of questions you could ask there that are related to, let's say, the interplay between information technology on the one hand and endangered or minority languages on the other hand. But I suppose one very kind of lexicographically relevant question that I want to ask is, and that's a question for Anna. If you look at the entry structure that you have in your dictionaries, it's compared to what we typically have in other dictionaries, let's say published dictionaries or academic dictionaries, the entry structure that you have there it's very different. It's a lot simpler and it's a lot flatter. You don't even subdivide entries into senses. And so this is kind of surprising. And I suppose this is probably connected to the fact that you're kind of going for, as you say, citizen linguists, or as I would say, citizen lexicographers. So you're basically crowdsourcing content. So, I mean, have you decided for this kind of flat data structure on purpose, or what is the reasoning behind it? Can you comment on that maybe a little briefly?
Yeah, sure, no problem. That's a great question. As you noticed, we really prioritize the ease of use. A lot of the people that we work with who are dictionary managers on the platform, they have limited digital literacy skills, limited access to internet too, a lot of the times, but most of them have, smartphones with them. So they're able to do a lot using their smartphones as workstations. And as you say, they're citizen lexicographers. So most of them are very passionate about their languages and they're already involved in some type of revitalization and documentation efforts, but they're not necessarily trained formally in linguistics or lexicography. So that's why we've prioritized this very simplistic structure, like you're saying. That being said, it is a work in progress. It's ever evolving and we're changing it. We continue to expand it and add new features. The dictionary managers can add multiple senses into one entry if they want, or they can have separate entries. And it's a search-driven dictionary platform. So whatever the people are searching for in multiple different languages that might be in the same dictionary, they can find it in the search. And we train them also in our free training sessions. We train them to try to tag as much as possible with all the different types of tags that we have for parts of speech, semantic domains, and many other types of tags. So that also helps yield long search results that might be useful to them. So yeah, we definitely really appreciate this question. We also get a lot of requests to batch import digital dictionary data from other platforms. And so we definitely see that there are like much more complex data structures out there. And so, we're kind of balancing all these different worlds and to make something that's really useful for people on the grassroots level.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Oh yeah, Greg's here too.
Following up
Greg,
on that,
yeah.
just quickly on that, yeah, it's best to conceive of it as kind of an entry-level tool for languages that have no even orthographic tradition necessarily. So sort of a way to resolve in a non-threatening way these issues, because it requires not only things like resolving how to write a language, but a meta language to describe language and various other sort of language development steps that are required and often the communities we work with, this is the very first time they've engaged on this. So that's sort of that, but it's a need clearly at some point. So that's thanks for that question.
Yeah, thanks very much. I totally understand that, and do not take it as criticism. I think it's refreshing to see a dictionary with a simple entry structure, because one of my lifelong goals in lexicography is to actually convince people that the data structure that we're using in professional lexicography tends to be overwhelmingly complex, and we need to simplify things. So it's refreshing to see something like this. Another thing that has been quite new to me is in Sander's talk about the tool Evoke and about how he has integrated annotations into this tool, is that the whole idea of annotating things on the web as opposed to, I suppose, commenting, right? That has been completely new to me. I never knew that this universe existed. So I wonder, Sander, if you could maybe sort of explain a little bit more about the background. How is annotating different from commenting, and maybe emphasize again how the annotations are actually, they're not on the internet, okay? They're stored on your local computer in your local browser. And the next question after that would interest me is, what do you envisage that people would actually do with those annotations that they have kind of privately attached to, let's say, dictionaries or thesauruses? Can you comment on?
Thanks very much, Michal. So my paper unfortunately didn't have enough space to go into these topics, but I definitely wanted to. So I'm really happy that you asked this. So there are already ways to, without this setup that I've described, there are already tools out there that allow you to annotate rather than comment. Now, for me, what the main difference here is that for annotation, we are typically referring to a piece of content instead of replicating it, instead of downloading it, let's say, for your own bookkeeping. But another important point is that annotation rather than commenting also suggests that it might be possible to add explicit markers or labels to a certain piece of information. So to for instance, add a small label stating that a specific word or word sense has been found in a certain text or has been used in a certain text or by a certain author or in a certain period, etc. So some salient information there. And by making that explicit using annotations rather than a textual string of words, it makes it possible to use this bit of extra information, this extension, let's say, to use that in unison with the original information to enable searches for all those words or word senses that occur in that specific text or have been used by that specific author. It's actually something that has been very much in demand if we look at reviews of many existing thesauri that I've gone through, that most researchers have mentioned that they found these resources extremely useful for studying a language and culture that the language community kind of used. So what kind of concepts did they have? What kind of words did they have? What kind of alternatives? But they tended to always basically say in popular language, what a shame that there's not more information. We would like more. Of course, lexicographers can only cater to so much information, especially considering there's a wealth of aspects that one could tackle. So there's a need for researchers to be able to add additional information and in an explicit manner. However, not all of these perspectives necessarily have to be made public for viewing for everybody out there. They might be interesting only for certain groups of scholars or certain groups of users, not necessarily scholars, of course. So in that sense, this was one of the reasons why I didn't just want to create another annotation system that already exists using similar setup with online databases where it's immediately public for all. One has to moderate the content because there might be profane language use or other sorts. One has to create a user account, etc. But to kind of lower the barriers for people to engage with the material by saying, hey, you can already add information that is your own, let's say, your own copyrighted information, because you type it, you add it, but only with a reference to the actual original information and stored locally so that you can decide when and where to share those extra bits of information. But viewing the original content can still only be done on the original website. So viewing these annotations, the extra information can only be done in unison with that original website. And in fact, what is very helpful in this sense for, if I go to your follow-up question on what kind of purpose could this have, or what kind of uses could this have, I would argue that that can be very helpful for feedback to the lexicographers for one. So that's just simply a feedback loop of, we might not want all of this information public, but we can hand over such an annotation file and say, hey, these are our annotations of our comments towards the editors and lexicographers, what could be improved or what is still to be done there. But what I've done in research projects within a project called Exploring Early Modern, Exploring Early Medieval Eloquence, English eloquence, is that we've gathered lots of researchers who were interested in adding information. So simply saying, we are interested in acknowledging that for a thesaurus of Old English, in this case, which captures early medieval English language, to add these points of salient features to say this was used by this particular author in the Middle Ages, or this word sense is attested in this particular text, and to use that actually not just for viewing online, but to indicate that after such a round of being satisfied with having added this information, to allow engagement with the original lexicographers or services to use these sets of annotations together with the original resource, because both have been made explicit in a digital format that are linked together, to allow querying them together for more advanced analyses. So in this sense, we have been using the thesaurus structure, which is a semantic structure, to allow to see how specific in meaning or how generic in meaning were the words available in a certain text, or how many alternatives, how many synonyms did a certain author have when he was or had access to, most likely, when he or she was writing a certain text. And these kinds of analyses require people to still engage with the original lexicographers or hosters of the material, to engage with them for their expertise. So they still have their annotations, which are worthwhile just for viewing, but for additional services to really bring the two sets of information together for more in-depth analyses, where it makes sense not just to view it alongside each other, but also to query it as a single source. There, actually, the strength is that all these annotations are explicit as well, so it can be shared already, a low-level entry, but afterwards can be together with the original lexicographers taken to a next level of analyses as well.
Right. Yeah. So I read that as meaning that annotation would be a tool for power users, really, as opposed to casual kind of dictionary browsers.
I would say so, although lots of students have been using it too. So not simply,
Okay, so
we haven't just
users. Yeah, thanks very much for explaining that. We need to move along. My question for Geda about Ambi Forms. Now, this is taking us to a completely different stage of the dictionary process, much closer to the corpus rather than to the end user. So basically what you've done is you've developed a method for deciding whether something is a lemma or a form of another lemma, right? So my question is, how does that integrate into your entire dictionary writing process? I mean, are you using this as one of the criteria for deriving lemma lists, let's say at the beginning of a dictionary project, or are you using it to, to improve your post taggers, or exactly how is this whole thing integrated into your other tools, into your kind of workflow? Can you comment on that briefly?
Yes, thank you. Right now, the lexicographers can validate their suspicions or check out certain forms, but we think that this tool has potential to be integrated into the dictionary writing process, and why not at the beginning, at the initial stage. When the lemma or headword list is generated, and the forms with a critically high distributional index level could be then retrieved as lemma candidates.
Yeah. Okay. So it's early stages, right? This is basically a prototype. It's not like a finished.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Yeah. And then we have LeXmart here, right? Which is basically like your all-around dictionary writing system. I mean, or Alberto, would you agree? Would you describe LeXmart as a dictionary writing system, or is it something more than that? Or how would you categorize that? And there was a question in the chat about how LeXmart compares to Lexonomy as well, which is another dictionary writing system that people know. So maybe can you comment on that? I mean, what genre of software is it?
Sure. Okay. It is a complete writing system, so the idea is to help the lexicographer from the beginning, so creating new entries, up to managing the complete workflow. So things like finding how many entries you have per domain level or per geographic level and so on, so you don't end up with only one or two entries in a specific domain, for instance. It also includes search, both by lemma and the full complete textual search, and other minor details that help on managing the dictionary. It's just not the final database to be presented to the user. So at the moment, this is only a management and developing system. The dictionary at the end should be exported somewhere else to be queried. We don't want at the moment to do that in LeXmart. Regarding comparing with Lexonomy, I think LeXmart is a little older. not much time, but a little. It was developed more slowly, and so we just didn't want to stop something that we are working on and is doing what we need, and focus on other tools that probably will need some adaptations. So it was easier to keep our development in parallel, knowing all the problems that might give us. Trying to compare, I'm not a user of Lexonomy at all, so I never used it. But I suspect that it is more stable than LeXmart. As far as I know, it has more people developing it. And probably LeXmart is more TLX 0 compliant than Lexonomy, but also I'm talking without very well knowledge of Lexonomy, so I'm sorry if I'm not correct.
Sorry, Alberto. May I add something for this? I just want to say that for the time being, of course, Lexonomy is a very good and stable tool. It gives a very good response. But at the beginning of our project, the Portuguese Academy Dictionary, we didn't have the Lexonomy as we have today. So, and we had, I want to clarify this, we had tight deadlines and very specific needs. I needed answers for yesterday. So we have to work on as a team. And the idea was to publish the 2001 edition of the Portuguese Academy Dictionary, and things change very quickly then. So we start developing the LexMart, and I needed a tool with a very good response to my management, because I'm working alone with a lot of collaborators on this dictionary. So Alberto created LexMart with the filters to catch, to search for the domain, all the labels, the linguistic labels. And it was because we started the revision of this dictionary working on the entries that had domain labels. And that would only be possible by working with someone who was in direct contact with me and working together all the components of the dictionary, because this dictionary, the Lisbon Academy of Science Dictionary, has a specific structure that I know that if I was working now with Lexonomy, I had to put questions and ask to change some structure, and I need some elements that in Lexiconomy I didn't have this response. I'm not saying that Lexiconomy doesn't give this response. I just am saying that I had to contact you to give these answers. I'm thinking, for example, about the propositions. We had a specific structure for these lexicographic entries, so we needed solutions. And as I told you, with a tight deadline.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. You certainly don't have to apologize or justify why you are developing your own in-house system, because that's very common.
And for example, and I think we discussed this. We have in I think in eLex we discussed this. Now we have also image in LexMart, and for me it's great to have Alberto working with me, because for example, now in the end of the year we will put available our dictionary. So, and we are working together on working on the icons and the very specific icons for identify the components of the dictionary. And I think we are doing a great work. But as Alberto said, this project is a non-funded project. We just have a little fund for doing some tasks. So we are working on well, very slowly. So, and
that's perfectly fine. Thanks for explaining that. As I say, there's absolutely no need to justify anything. Can I just briefly go back to Ambi Forms and the methods that the distributional index calculator. So Yelena is saying in the chat window that she wants to have this in the sketch engine. You can probably not disagree with that. You have to agree with that. One last question that I would like to ask, which is from the chat window, is that would be a question for Anna and Gregory, again, for Living Dictionaries. It's a question about quality management. So if in Living Dictionaries everybody can contribute, who curates the dictionaries, or who looks after the quality, or who makes sure that the data that's being collected is actually good? I suppose every dictionary has some sort of a dictionary manager, you said. So is that the person who kind of acts as a gatekeeper, or how do you manage these things?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Marsan, for that question too. There are crowdsourced dictionaries, but there's only small teams of people who have created the dictionaries. They're the ones who are adding the content. And at this point, since we're still, growing, we've actually met most of these dictionary managers during our Zoom trainings. So we're able to meet them, hear from them, and know their background a little more. At a certain point, as it keeps scaling up, we probably won't be able to meet every single person on the platform anymore. But we do offer them free sessions where we offer assistance and answer their questions to help improve their work. And I'd say the majority of them are people who have already been producing like local community pamphlets and booklets and anything they can get their hands on for their own educational classes and Facebook forums and stuff. So by and large, we trust the quality of what they're doing. That being said, we can't control the quality of everything on the platform, but we do offer help also with our intern cohorts. So if you know any young linguistics students for next year, we always have a ton of linguistic students coming to us every year around the world to help curate these dictionaries a little more. We clean them up. We work closely with the communities and the dictionary managers themselves to make sure that they're tagging them properly with semantic domains and parts of speech and other tags. And we're also we're trying to roll out more automated features to help improve the quality of the dictionary.
I see. So you're basically using sort of gentle guidance plus taking advantage of the fact that it's small groups and it's easier to manage quality in small groups. Yeah.
That said, there is an inherent hierarchy in. So there is someone called the dictionary manager, and they have sort of final say on what goes into it. And then there are dictionary contributors who can add content, but they can't remove content. That's in part based on what Anna was just saying, like, because we use a lot of interns to help do things, and we want to allow them to do things, but not like necessarily undo something accidentally.
We are already a little bit over time, so I'm afraid we have to sort of end the official bit here. I want to thank everybody for coming here and introducing us to their software tools and to the processes behind them. If there are any more questions, they can be put in the chat or in the LeXmeet platform. So thank you very much. And this is also the last session of the day. So see you everybody at 9 a.m. tomorrow.